So hi everyone, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Catherine Devine, I'm the Civic Science Fellow at the Center for Cooperative Media, and I'm joined by Sarah Armour-Jones, who's a consultant with the Rita Allen Foundation. And today we're going to tell you a little bit about Civic Science Media. Hopefully you can gain a better understanding about what that actually is, what that looks like, and then we'll talk about our grant program, give you a little bit of information about what we're looking for, and then answer any questions you have. So let's get started. Okay, so to start, I just want to talk a little bit about what civic science is and what the civic science imperative is. So as we all know, for us in science, not looking too great right now. And in this sort of era of all these advances in technology and science and like information, we need these stronger connections between science and society to instill trust, make sure science and technology and all these innovations are actually having the positive impact that we'd like them to have. And I think this quote over here really captures civic science quite well, by Mariette D. Christina. There are challenging multidisciplinary issues where the answers aren't always what the science says. The answers are what we decide to do as a community. So the civic science imperative really is all about taking science and scientific advances and making sure that it's having that practical impact at hyper local levels, ideally, and then hopefully that ripples outwards, instead of just staying in these sort of academic silos. And we see media as a really powerful conduit to do that, by bridging the gap between science and communities. So that brings us to civic science media specifically. And so what civic science media is it's this creation of journalists, storytellers, scientists, community members, all working together to collaboratively address issues of shared interest. And so it's this connector, it's this conduit between scientists and then the people most impacted by these scientific discoveries. And I just want to take a moment to explain more concretely how that differs from other forms of journalism like science communication, community engagement journalism, solutions journalism, etc. So for science communication, you're focused more on informing communities about different scientific topics, trying to target your communication strategy for the audience itself. For engagement journalism, right, we're focusing on community-centered storytelling and engaging others. For solutions journalism, we're highlighting promising solutions to issues. And then civic science media kind of all rolls that into sort of this feedback loop where we're informing communities in the way that they want to be informed, but we're also listening to them and engaging them into this multi-directional conversation. So it's going both ways. And then we're also it's issue focused as well. We're using the science in scientific discoveries to use journalism as a medium to hopefully move some needle in the community, whether that's through air pollution monitoring or even something as creative as a fictional play to spread awareness about something. Okay, so now I'm going to hand it over to Sarah, who's going to tell us a little bit more about why we need civic science media now. And then she's also going to go in a little bit to some case studies that she examined throughout this wonderful landscape scan that she put together that really highlights so many wonderful civic science media initiatives across the US.
Hey, thanks, Catherine. Can folks hear me okay? Can I get a thumbs up? We're good? Okay, awesome.
Here, sounds great.
Okay, awesome. It's great to be with everyone. I'm Sarah Armour-Jones. I'm a longtime consultant to the Rita Allen Foundation and a bunch of philanthropies. My day job is working on narrative change, particularly around housing and homelessness. So I'm really interested in the power of storytelling and media for social change. And that's been sort of the through line of my career. And so this project was really interesting because it sort of weaves together a lot of different issue areas that I think of shared interest, shared concern. And so as Catherine was talking about released a report, which was very collaborative, and Catherine is shortchanging her contribution to this. So very, very collaborative effort where we really were exploring examples of civic science media, trying to figure out sort of what are the connection points, what are the opportunities, what are the particular challenges now of civic science media projects. And, it starts really with the framing of there's an urgency in both science right now and in media and in community engagement and trust. So, this fun visual on the right side is like the festering, angry, explosion that I think we often see in communities. And if you spend any time on Nextdoor, this is probably like the great example of it, right? People are not trusting experts. They feel disconnected from science and its role in their personal lives. It feels very top down. It feels separate from their concerns. And media in many ways is in the same boat, particularly legacy media, whereas we see a lot of trust and engagement with social content creators and sort of personalities, right? So science isn't really connecting with communities. People are feeling distrustful and disconnected. Media is struggling, I'm going to say accurate, thoughtful media is struggling to connect with folks, right? And then there are these big, deep trust deficits that we're seeing. And so there's this sort of perfect storm of disconnect. And when you have that situation, you then also have this opportunity to really intentionally connect science and media and community, what we call civic science media. So let's go to the next slide, Catherine, or Joe. All right. So just really briefly, we can talk about the purpose behind it, some of how it works, and we can get into some examples, which I think are most important, particularly for folks who are interested in the next round of grants from the center, because they'll exemplify this sort of breadth of channels that we consider, media and things like that. But one of the most important pieces of civic science media is that the community is really deeply involved in identifying the issue or identifying the problem, right? So in this sense, media serves as a bridge or a conduit, as Catherine said, between scientists who are concerned about an issue, or maybe not yet concerned about an issue, but should be concerned about an issue that a community is grappling with, right? So air pollution is a great example. And a lot of the civic science media examples that we found related to sort of air and flooding, right? Those are like very tangible impacts that communities are struggling with. So if it's a community in a really busy industrial community with a lot of Amazon warehouses and trucks and factories who are struggling with asthma and all sorts of other breathing issues, wanting to identify how do we deal with this? How do we improve this? How do we get policymakers to address this, business leaders to address this? The part where media comes in is that they can be the facilitator of that storytelling and really capturing what the community is going through. They can help connect the community concerns with scientists who might say, hey, these sensors aren't working particularly well, or these aren't actually up to date, and they're sort of lowballing the particulate matter in the air, whereas what the community is really dealing with is much, much higher, and sort of bring that all together to be able to present the community's concerns, the community's upset, and the impact on the community with scientific data to policymakers who, media members have the sort of ear of policy members. So it's a really like looped figure, just as you see here, right? Science and journalists are collaborating with the information and concerns of the community, and the community is driving the issues, the concerns, the questions, and it's sort of this beautiful loop that science is really informed by community needs and then responding to the community needs as well. So that is a great example or a great model, but let's look at some of the examples in action just to give you a sense. All right, so the first one, great film, Coded Bias, documentary film. And the report, which I know will be linked shortly if you haven't seen it, has just very, very short case snapshots, if you will, right? They're not exhaustive. It's really meant to be a very accessible report so that you can see sort of the breadth of civic science media projects that we found. Again, not an exhaustive list, just sort of a good sampler. But Coded Bias is great because first of all, an incredibly powerful film focusing on the harmful biases built into AI systems. And one of the things that I liked the most about this, so sorry, let me back up. It explores the work of MIT Media Lab researcher Joy Buolamwini, his name I probably just butchered, but her discovery that facial recognition software was not seeing dark-skinned people accurately. And that led her onto this big journey of sort of looking into AI systems and the increasing use of facial recognition software. And what was really cool about this is not only is it sort of a documentary film examining this, right? But it includes social advocacy toolkits and guides for policymakers, which I think is incredibly important because most of the time members of Congress really don't have any expertise in this, and they're getting a lot of campaign cash from big tech. So this was an opportunity for advocacy organizations and community members to really engage in sort of saying what we want out of the future of AI. And then there was the Algorithmic Justice League, which was also founded by the researcher, invited people to share their stories of harm done by AI to sort of build a movement for equitable AI. And so the media sort of tells the story, but also invites the, questions and concerns from the community, and then gives them an opportunity to share out and, be part of the solution. So that is a great piece. And I think we actually have a trailer.
During my first semester at MIT, I got computer vision software that was supposed to track my face. It didn't work until I put on this white mask. I'm thinking, all right, what's going on here? Is it the lighting conditions? Is it the angle at which I'm looking at the camera, or is there something more? That's when I started looking into issues of bias that can creep into technology.
Our ideas about technology that we think are normal are actually ideas that come from a very small and homogeneous group of people.
Vast amounts of data at incredible speeds.
Everybody has unconscious biases, and people embed their own biases into technology.
This kid got stopped as a result of facial recognition misidentification, and then used that as justification to search you. This is an innocent child.
Racism is becoming mechanized.
Systemic issues are only going to be hardwired into new technologies.
It's not just face classification, it's any data-centric technology.
Every day, we are all being scored.
Who gets hired, who gets housing.
I am making predictions for your life right now.
The people who own the code deploy it on other people, and there is no accountability.
Management at Atlantic Towers wanted to install the facial recognition software. Pretty much turn this place into Fort Knox.
The technology is being rapidly adopted, and there are no safeguards.
We are socially controlled in a way that we don't see.
Technology that analyzes faces could be biased, but the company is pushing it anyway.
What demographic is it most effective on?
White men.
Show me that it's going to be fair, that it's legal, before you put it out. That's what we don't have yet.
It's going to take people coming together, striving for justice in this age of automation.
I'm so glad we got to see that. And I'm going to put a link to the Algorithmic Justice League in the chat for folks who are interested in that particular example and the sort of impact campaign and the storytelling that they're doing. But let's go to the next example. All right, so this is a completely different one, right? We chose a bunch of different examples to show the wide variety of formats of media that we're considering. And this came out of ASTC's Community Science Dialogue and Deliberation Fellowship Program. And the examples we chose were one of many. So they have a bunch of really, really cool projects. And so we basically said, like, this was experiential, right? And so wide lens on media, right? But again, elevating community priorities around science issues, particularly to encourage engagement. And one of the examples that I think is sort of most pertinent to this group is the Colorado News Collaborative, worked with the Institute for Science and Policy at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, along with the Colorado State University's Center for Public Deliberation, right? So very science, very deliberation. And they hosted a two-part in-person event to discuss how to address misinformation, particularly science and health-related misinformation among Black, Latino, Indigenous, and other sort of less represented communities across the Denver area. And so navigating misinformation in our community brought together, I think it was about 70 people. So community leaders, media makers, to build and rebuild, in some cases, relationships and identify opportunities for action. And so it was not just, here's what we're concerned about, which is a very important part of it, but here's how the coverage can be better, and specifically speaking to science and health misinformation. So that was a great example. This is an awesome visual of some fantastic museum, but representing the fact that museums are, increasingly not just within the walls of the museum. Their work, their programming is out in the community. And, when you have a museum working with journalists and community, that for us is civic science media. So let's go to the next one. All right, and here's the third of like the wild examples. And as Catherine mentioned, I think theater, we're including that. So State Impact Climate Solutions is a coalition of a large number of news outlets, including hyperlocal and Spanish language media in central Pennsylvania, really trying to address the impact and concerns around climate change in the local community. It's really taking it from this, big problem to how is this impacting our local community and what are the solutions that we're identifying. So definitely that sort of dialogue and deliberation aspect, but then also community-led citizen science and bringing the conversation around science outside of news and into theater and other creative spaces. So this project is really sort of broad and experimental as well as experiential to really sort of take what is often divisive, a divisive conversation around, is climate change happening? That was not the conversation. It's climate change is happening. How are we experiencing it? Which I think is a really great lens and sort of focusing on the community solutions. So I think it's just maybe it's, I think there is a video here of climate solutions. Yeah, so we can hear that. And this is a great piece, if we're able to play it, about many of the different media makers who were joining together and sort of explaining why they're doing this, which is just nice to see cooperation across a lot of different outlets.
Climate change might not be words that you think about a lot in your daily life.
You're one person. And climate change, well, it's about the whole world.
But its effects are all around us in central Pennsylvania.
The world we live in is changing.
Scientists say human activity is causing the Earth to warm at a rate never seen before.
That threatens the natural world and our quality of life, across the globe and here at home.
We're already feeling it.
Heavier rain can hurt farmers' crops.
Stronger storms can threaten people's homes.
More intense heat waves can put people at risk, especially in cities.
Scientists say we need to act to avoid the worst of this.
But sometimes it seems like there are too many problems and too few solutions.
But news coverage shouldn't make us hopeless.
We think stories can inspire and empower us.
So we've come together to create Climate Solutions, a collaboration of news organizations, educational institutions, and a theater company.
We'll connect central Pennsylvanians using storytelling, events, and education.
We're listening.
Tell us how changing weather patterns are affecting your life or livelihood.
And tell us what's working where you are to solve these problems. Tell us if something is standing in the way.
The words climate change means that we all have problems to solve.
Your stories will highlight what's working or what could work to help us meet the challenges of our warming world.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So as you can see, we've got experiential theater, we've got documentary film and impact campaigns, we have museums, and like everything in between. And so that's really the goal of the landscape brief, was to just show the breadth of types of projects that are out and about, and certainly the types of projects that I know the center is hoping for in grant submissions. So there we go. Catherine.
Cool. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to.
No, that's cool. That's totally cool. So I think you're up next.
Cool. Okay. So thanks so much, Sarah, for those project overviews. As you can see, there's such a wide variety of shapes and forms that civic science media can take. So I just want to talk a little bit about some key challenges that we've observed from previous civic science media projects. And so as we mentioned, Sarah did this wonderful landscape scan, but the Center for Cooperative Media also sort of started researching these cross-field collaborations a few years ago, 2021, 2022, with Dr. Sarah Stonebelly of the center, in collaboration with some other researchers at the center, funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, started with this really comprehensive research of a bunch of different cross-field collaborations. And through that, the Rita Allen Foundation saw, a place for civic science in these cross-field collaboration projects that were highlighted. And so the Rita Allen Foundation, in cooperation with the center, decided to run a pilot grant program for 12 different civic science media projects, funded them for 6 months, and kind of saw what happened, did a review, wrote a report, and picked up on some really good takeaways about what worked, what didn't work, what's challenging, and hopefully this will help inform on all of your projects and then also our current grant program. And so some key challenges that we've noticed, number one is just clear definitions, which was one of the reasons why we're having this webinar right now, because civic science media, well, what exactly does that mean? So many people have been saying that, and it is ill-defined, but it's purposefully ill-defined in a way where, it can take so many shapes and forms that having strict contours sometimes isn't the most beneficial way of going about it. Rather, we'd focus on a definition that really emphasizes the core components of civic science media, which are, scientific engagement, community engagement, a hyperlocal focus, and then also journalism that really engages in a multi-directional conversation with partners. And so once we have that clear definition, that enables every collaborator to kind of get on the same page and know exactly what this project is, what's at the core of their project. Another key challenge was funding. It's a perennial challenge. People always need more money. And because if you're limited in funding and the grant cycle is shorter, it's hard to really build the trust between collaborators that is really necessary to go deep into a community and really have that impact that you want to have. And which leads us to time as another key challenge. Partnerships and collaborations take time. We noticed that projects that had histories with their collaborators tended to have better outcomes, just because you have to spend less time of getting to know your partners, how they work best, how you're going to collaborate, defining those expectations and roles. And that all takes time and trust. And when you're working with a rush timeline, obviously that's going to slip a little bit. Another challenge is also a little bit of a perennial challenge. How do you measure impact? And something I think collectively we have come to is that, relationship quality matters more than overt numbers. And what I mean by that is the goal of a lot of these projects is to have them be self-iterative and hopefully continue. So we would, when you're thinking about impact and measuring impact, I think sometimes the best way to start is to focus on, am I really connecting with the community? Am I really connecting with my partners? And is this a way that we can, engage in a multi-directional conversation and keep iterating and move forward, rather than how many people am I engaging and clicks and likes and stuff like that. And then, the final key challenge kind of sums all of this up together, which really is just shared understanding. Do you and your partner have the same impact goals in mind? Do you and your collaborators have clear responsibilities and a clear delineation of tasks? Are you and your partners on the same page as to where this is going? And do you have systems in place to iterate and receive feedback throughout the process? So these are all, things that are pretty hard and challenges that we've seen come up time and time again. So here are some recommendations that we have now incorporated into our current grant program, and also recommendations we have for, future award recipients. So one is that, flexible long-term funding is better for trust building. Because of this, we, sorry, could everyone mute? Thank you. So flexible long-term funding is important for trust building, as I just went over. So for this new cycle, we extended the grant period to 9 to 12 months, so a little bit longer than the initial 6, with room for further extension if you're a new partnership. And so hopefully that will give enough time to form more deeper and more productive working relationships that hopefully have longevity. Another recommendation is to really make sure you're utilizing diverse engagement methods to meet people where they are. We want to make sure that projects are engaging a wide variety of people and members of a community, not just those that maybe initially jump at the idea of being involved in a project, but trying to focus on, engaging people who might be on the fringes of a traditional community member who's so obsessed with these new initiatives. How do we convince people to participate in these problems, and understand that certain communities might have different relationships with journalists and scientists than other communities, and that a lot of times their distrust is coming from places that are historically very understandable. And so that, leads me to this third bullet point, which is just accessible, inclusive processes that acknowledge past harms. There's a deep distrust in a lot of communities of journalists and of scientists because, historically, scientists and journalists have missed the mark. And I think that it's important to realize that and understand that context when you're entering a project that should be, in essence, hyper-local. And then this fourth bullet point kind of leads on that. So community-driven agenda setting and priorities. What that means is that these projects should be multi-directional. And what I mean by that is that it's engaging in a dialogue with all partners. So that means journalists engaging with scientists, scientists engaging with journalists, but also journalists engaging with the public engaging with journalists, scientists engaging with the public, and the public engaging with scientists. And so we really want to, as Sarah was talking about, kind of dispel this top-down model of information flow, and instead work on something that's more circular or bi-directional, where the community can also inform priorities, and that they're not just, participants. They're not just an audience, but they're also participants in the process. And then, this last recommendation is, if you do have community participation and you're able to, include compensation, that's something that we've seen in past projects, and something that we would recommend and would look well, or else you don't want uncompensated labor when you're asking for so much contribution. So yeah, this is just sort of in sum, building the field of civic science media, just summarizing, looking forward to realize this full potential. We need, sustained funding for these collaborative projects. We need to know more about more about what effective models of civic science media and their impacts look like. And this is all part of the process. We're still building this field, and thankfully, we've come a long way since our first pilot grant program. Now with the landscape scan, we have some literature reviews and some surveys out as well. And then we need more training across, scientific journalism and community engagement, which is something that we're looking to provide more of in this round of grants. Networks connecting practitioners across fields, and then also just a shared language and evaluation frameworks, because scientists and journalists, they come from such different backgrounds with such different ethical codes that sometimes collaboration can be a little sticky when a more traditional journalist is trying to maintain subject matter distance, and a scientist at a academic institution is slightly distrustful that a journalist might, strip the nuance out of their findings, or maybe sensationalize something or make it more clickbaity. So also just kind of this shared language, shared understanding between these different disciplines is also something that, hopefully we're still building, and we can build better guidelines around that as well. And so this leads me to our our new grant program. And so just quick overview, we're providing grants up to $15,000 for a 9 to 12 month project period, which is an extended project period to hopefully provide, more time for getting to know your partners and building those deeper connections. We could go up to 15 months for new collaborations. The application deadline is at the end of August. And what we're looking for is collaboration between science and media organizations. We're looking for a community engagement component, and not just a community engagement component, but a multi-directional community engagement component, as well as multi-directional components across the board. As I said, think of this model more circularly rather than a linear project flow. And then it's really important that the project addresses issues relevant to specific communities. So Sarah talked about, citizen science projects are fairly common because those are engaging the community for a project rooted in the community. Something like air pollution monitoring, pretty common. Something that's directly relevant to the members of that community. So if you remember at the beginning, the civic science imperative, it really is about taking the science and making it have tangible impact. And that's exactly what we're looking to use media as a conduit to help do that. So this is all stuff to keep in mind. And some more guidelines here. So when we're going through all your applications, we're going to be looking at these questions to help us assess, is this project truly civic science media? And so these questions that we're going to look at and that I'm providing to you, so you can help think about when you're creating your own project is, does the proposed project involve collaboration? Is there a science organization involved? Is there a media organization involved? Have collaborators worked together before? Is there a clearly defined audience? And it's like, are the questions addressed relevant? And so these questions to consider are also available in our grant announcement. So you can screenshot this now, but they're also publicly available. But I just wanted to list these questions again here, just so you can, if you're brainstorming what your project might look like, or if you have any ideas, this might help get you there. And then the last thing I want to point out is the last bullet on this slide. Does the project center climate science, neuroscience, artificial intelligence? While, not necessary, these are three areas of focus that we are particularly interested in. Okay, so now I'd like to open up for questions. If you have any questions about, what civic science media is, anything more about the grants, any questions. And you can also feel free to grab time on my calendar or email me at my email and contact information is all in the grant announcement as well.
All right, let's open it up for questions. You can either raise your hand or you can post your question in the chat and we will read it out loud for you. We got one from Simon. How would you recommend local news or community organizations find scientists or scientific institutions with which to partner?
So I guess this is assuming it would be a new partnership. I guess I would probably focus on identifying the issue, the community-driven issue that you want to look into first. I think going to your community and thinking about what issues are in my local news right now, what am I hearing about, and maybe let that lead you is my instinct. Sarah, do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. Starting with the community and then thinking about like who are the local academic, institutions, are there local, river alliances or museums or citizen science groups or organizations that have that sort of broad reach, whether it's ASTC or, climate groups that have sort of state-based and local chapters. And I would also look at the Civic Science Fellows, on the Civic Science Fellows site. Maybe we can drop that in and see, who's working on interesting things. I think a lot of this is, there's not this huge infrastructure yet. Like you all are building the early infrastructure in this work, and so I think there's a lot of sort of opportunity to reach out and ask who's doing what and get connected, with other people informally. Yeah, Riverkeeper. Thank you, Christina. I knew I was thinking of that. That's exactly the kind of group that I was thinking about. So thank you for suggesting that.
Andrea, I see you raising your hand.
You know what? I have to let people unmute. Go ahead and unmute now.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Hi, guys. I just have a quick question regarding what constitutes like civic science media. I work with Ciencia Puerto Rico, and we do have one project where we partner with local community partners. We have a cohort of community ambassadors. And we do create like media and public health educational materials that we share with them. Would we constitute a civic media, or would we need to partner with like a local media, which we usually partner with? I just want to have a sense of what kind of composition would serve us best, if we should be the science component and partner with local media as that local media component. Like what shape would should the partnership take?
So sorry, to clarify can you say the project one more time?
So I work with Ciencia Puerto Rico, Science Puerto Rico. I was also a previous civic science fellow in the second cohort, so I'm familiar with this space. I just want to know if, when it comes to like the partnerships, we do have a program where we create like a public health educational material, so media content, and we do share it widely via either social media partnerships with local media, like different platforms. We give it to local community partners so they can adapt them to their context, and they create like different projects based on the materials that we developed with them. I just want to get a sense of like, when it comes to writing up the application, would we be the science organization, the media organization, or the academic institution? Like what, because I do feel like we could be all three. I guess would love to get your insight of like what formation would be a better, I guess, sales pitch.
I just jump in on this one, Catherine, because Ciencia PR, there's a project in the landscape scan.
I remember
one of your projects is in there, and so that's a great question.
Yeah, that's the book based on this project.
With like the ebook, and so I think, in the landscape, there was sort of this loose definition of like, you are a science organization and you're creating this media. So you were, in many cases, the organization was playing this sort of hybrid role, which was super cool. And we were thrilled to highlight that. But Catherine might have more specific delineation for this grant round. So I just wanted to clarify, and it was great to great to include that project. Very cool work.
I also just want to shout out that Catherine put together a really neat interactive game that you can use to sort of see different examples. That's right on the Civic Science homepage here. You can start the game, you get a scenario, you choose whether or not it is or isn't civic science media. You do 10 of those, you get a little score. And then she also made a really great introductory video that explains the core concepts. And I think it's really easy to understand. So if anybody is unsure about what is civic science, what isn't civic science, this is really helpful. And then we do have an FAQ that goes into pretty much any question we could possibly think of in terms of how this might work for various organizations. And all of that is on the link in the chat if you'd like to see it. And it will be sent out with the materials once we're done with this and we send out the recording.
Mm-hmm. I would also just like to say, I think maybe I would focus less on, checking these boxes, science organization, media organization. Instead, instead I would think of it more as like, are we incorporating science? Are we incorporating media with our partners? So I don't think you necessarily need to say, oh, I am the science organization, or I'm the media organization. I think instead we're just looking for these three components through collaboration. So I don't think you need to get too stuck on, what box this specifically fits in. I think those questions are more guidelines to help you think about what civic science media is and if your project, fits within that scope. But there's no hard and fast boundaries or rules. And like this is, the Rita Allen Foundation always talks about civic science being boundary spanning, and so we definitely want to encourage, boundary spanners. We don't need to be like concrete silos. And in fact, I think cross-pollination can be really wonderful in these projects. Okay, I'm seeing some questions in the chat. Oh, Jen. So Jen was asking, Jen's a scientist talking to two different media organizations or two different projects. And she wants to know if there's a limit to the number of proposals you can be part of. There's no limit, but we do encourage you to focus on one project, just making it the best you can be, but there's no limit. All right, I'm just looking at the questions. So Anna Marie, I don't think so Anna Marie was asking if a regional scope for a project is too big when thinking about measuring impact, and instead if it's better to be more specific. There are lots of regional projects. I don't think a regional scope is too big. Sarah, do you have any thoughts there?
No, and I mean, especially, if you're looking at something related to, water and climate and other issues of regional, I think it makes a lot of sense. The state impact climate solutions in central Pennsylvania is a great model of that, right? It's like, it's a region of the state with a whole lot of different partners. So I think the piece is really that the partners are game and everybody has a really clear role in what they're doing. Like that's just the bigger challenge when you go regional is like, oh, I think we lost Catherine. Okay, she's going to come back on. I think just the challenge with that is making sure, with a lot of different partners that they all have a really clear role. But I think there is great power in that as well and can make, the impact even larger. Oh, great.
Excellent.
Thanks, Stephanie. Yeah. Thanks for adding
While we
that.
wait for Catherine to get back, just a note that when you get questions, make sure to read them fully out loud, in case some of the folks have any vision troubles or anything.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that, Joe, because I have hearing trouble and I sometimes forget about vision trouble. So I really appreciate that. That question was related to regional initiatives serving the entire Great Lakes. And they've identified a potential project that monitoring precipitation, and folks are really game. But the question was, is this too big? Is regional scope potentially too big for this? And so, my sense is no, as long as the partners are really defined and the roles are really defined. But Stephanie might have any comments on that as well, because
No, I think that, yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And Anne Marie, I am from Michigan, as you probably know. I'm very familiar with the work that you all, the fantastic work that you all do there. And in your case, I don't think regional is too big at all. As like Sarah said, as long as you have some pretty clearly defined, goals and metrics that you're going after, um, probably and I mean, even like in a small state, even a statewide effort might not be too big. It really just depends on the project that you're trying to do.
Everyone, I'm back. Sorry, my power cut out for a second.
No worries.
Shirley, I see you got your hand up.
Hi, I was on mute. Can you hear me?
Yep, go.
Hi, I have a couple of questions and a concern. So the first question is, does the grant offer any other support other than the funding?
Yeah, we're providing active coaching throughout the grant process. So this is something we did provide active coaching throughout our pilot grant program. And then our feedback was that, more would be nice. So we are going to provide active like check-ins, coaching, help with resources for all the grant recipients throughout the process.
Yep. And this is Stephanie. I'll just jump in here for a second again. We also have some money set aside in our grant from Rita Allen Foundation to provide some specialized coaching too. So if there's an individual organization that needs something that another organization does it, we have some money to help pay some folks to help you, because our goal is to make sure that you are successful. Anything that we can possibly do to make sure that you are successful in your project, we will absolutely do.
It sounds great. And now, does the reporter, well, I'm a reporter, I'm a journalist. So does for the grant, does the reporter have to be in the area where they're looking to report on for the duration of the grant? Because I'm a seasoned journalist, but I haven't really done any substantial reporting environmental issues. I'm looking into an issue in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And it is extremely, extremely challenging environment. There are frequent power outages and other issues. So do you have to be, but I'm actually a native of St. Thomas. So it's not like I'm just, helicopter in. I know the people, I know the environment. Would the reporter have to be in that area there's the area that they're looking at for the duration of the project?
I don't think we have any hard and fast rules about that, but the one thing I do want to point out is that we really want the projects to be like self-iterative and hopefully long-lasting. So I think, that's something we'll be looking for is will this project be sustainable long-term? And is it something that, can keep iterating and continue? So I think like that's more of the question that we would be assessing for. Stephanie, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah,
there?
no, I don't have anything else to add. Yeah, surely I totally understand what you're saying. No, you could work on a project and not physically be there. We want to make sure that the work that you're doing is engaging with the local community. So probably someone involved in the project is going to need to be on the ground in some form or fashion. But there's many things that can be done remotely today too. So it really just depends on the project, but no, we're not going to require that you physically be in any location. I just would note that, and this is in the grant FAQs too, that we are supporting projects for this that are in the United States. Territories count. And so that's fine too, but we don't want to
just scared me right there.
I know, right? Yes. I had to think about that when I first heard you say, I was like, wait a second.
Because unfortunately, some grants say that, and then you find out, it doesn't apply to the U.S. territories.
No, we cannot give an award stipend to an entity that is not based in the United States. It depends also who the award would go to, but yes, you doing work in the Virgin Islands would be absolutely count as part of this grant. That's fine.
And do you have to be connected with a news outlet, or because I'm a freelancer?
Yeah, great question. So we absolutely welcome freelancers to apply to this program. We, however, really encourage you to talk to us or talk to other folks in your network to arrange a partnership with some sort of media entity, because we don't have the capacity to connect folks with media entities, which is something we learned in the first round, because we actually did try to do that, and it ended up being way more complicated. So we're asking folks to establish your partnerships that include some kind of media entity in advance. And if you want to talk more about that, we can, set up some time with you and Catherine.
Yeah, because that's a whole other issue. I don't want to hog the time.
Totally. I know.
The
I get it.
last thing I wanted, yeah, that's really complicated. But the last issue I wanted to, concern I have is that I always try to incorporate diverse perspectives and voices in anything I do. This obviously would be a project that you would have to get the scientific community involved in. And I would love to partner. I've talked to a couple of people, these people they charge fees. So ideally, if I could partner with somebody, that would be great. But number one, I'm concerned about the fee issue. And number two, I'm concerned about editorial independence, especially given the climate that we're living in.
Yep. So when you say these people charge fees, who are these people and what are these fees that you're talking about?
Well, still in the development stage. So I've just contacted a couple of people, like somebody at a university. These are really credible people. So they're somebody that worked on the Flint, Michigan issue and that issue, and somebody that's working on environmental issues at a university in California. So these are all, legitimate,
Yeah. I'll grab those two questions real quick. So on the first one for fees. So we encourage you, as you apply for this grant with your partners, that you both all have to consider your costs, and those costs should be built into the $15,000. So I wouldn't consider it as a fee so much as if you're going to partner with a scientist at a university, you both need to come to the table understanding, well, for your time, surely it's going to cost $3,000 or $4,000. For the university partner's time, it's going to cost $2,000. For the audience component, it's going to cost this much. You need to factor that into your grant. On the second hand, the ethics issue, that's something that we will provide counseling about in depth, because scientists have ethics, journalists have ethics, and we also need to have ethical responsibilities to the communities that we're trying to help serve and engage. And all of those things need to work in a kind of harmony. And as a journalist, I absolutely understand the ethical concerns that you have, but we also ask that journalists come to these conversations with open minds and not automatically assume that your ethics trump everyone else's ethics in the partnership, which is hard for journalists to think about, because we really dig our heels in. So we want you to approach this in a partnership atmosphere and environment, and we will help coach you through that. We do not anticipate anyone compromising their ethics, but there may be things that you may do as part of this work that you may not have done before and may be uncomfortable, and we're here to help you work through that.
Thank you so much. I didn't mean to take up so much time. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, Christina. Yeah.
I'm so glad to see effort going to this kind of really cross-disciplinary and asking, like, how do we make science more actionable, more part of policy quicker? So thank you. And I have a question of just kind of who on the team to talk to, because our cooperative is building tech that was funded by the National Science Foundation, looking at cross-group collaboration. So if you are, well, I guess my question number one is part of your aim to foster learning across a cohort of grantees? And if so, who might I talk to look at the support infrastructure that we have for cross-group collaboration? That also hits on some of the, how do you actually see network health and network relational metrics that are much harder to get at than measurable impact metrics around the external viability of a project.
You can, so in the grant announcement, there's a link to grab time on my calendar, and I'd love to talk further with you about it.
Awesome, thanks.
Okay, we are at the top of the hour. I do see two hands raised. Do we have time? Shirley, we got to you. Christina, did we get to you yet? No?
There's a couple questions in the
We
chat.
just did.
We got some more in the chat? Okay, cool. All right.
Okay, a couple questions in the chat. Okay, I see
I can
them.
grab the legal advice one. For the question for Jamie on legal advice, we do not offer legal advice. However, we are happy to connect you with folks who do. We have a whole stable of attorneys, especially for journalists who can weigh in, who can help with pro bono, assistance there. It just depends on if you're looking for legal advice pre-award or post-award. So drop Catherine an email with more details about that.
And then Lupita, the website said this opportunity is not meant to fund long-term multi-year partnerships, but rather short-term pilots. Would the grant fund a element of a long-term project? Does the collaboration have to be new? Yes, we would fund a phase or element of a long-term project, and no, the collaboration does not have to be new. In fact, kind of even better because you already have hopefully like a deep relationship with people you're working with, and some basic responsibilities have already been delineated, which is something we found has been really successful for previous partnerships.
Catherine, did you get to Celia's question earlier above about what counts as science?
My internet
that's when
cut
you
out, and so when I rejoined, I lost the chat.
Okay. Okay. So there's a question from Celia Heck. I'm just going to grab it. I'm going to repaste it in here. Her question is, what counts as science? Can academics or sociology or public health space count as science?
Yes. Science is a pretty, broad term. And I think what we're looking for really is new knowledge, and how does that apply to communities, and how can we use that to help communities? We're really talking about how can we spread new knowledge, how can we spread new insights. And so I think I would take science, the definition of science, in a much more liberal sense there, and social science or like soft science, hard science I wouldn't get caught up on that. Any more questions?
There's one
Anyone we miss?
Yeah, from Anna Marie Seisling in Michigan.
Can you touch on compensation?
Yeah, read it out loud for us. So folks.
Can you touch on compensation for the public citizen scientists who are participating in civic science projects? That feels like we need to consider paying them for their time and efforts. Yes, that's something that I very, very briefly touched upon. We've seen in different case study reports that we've released. We've talked about programs that have compensated participants. For example, on the top of my head, I'm thinking of a student documenters program where this organization compensated a bunch of student documenters over a short-term period to attend public hearings and report back. And so that's something that you can use some of the funding for, and we definitely encourage that.
No one should ever contribute unpaid labor. That is something our center believes in very strongly.
Okay, any other questions, or any questions that I might have accidentally missed?
Well, thank you all so much. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Catherine. This is great. And if you do have any questions that come to you later, as we said, open door here. Go ahead and email us and let us know. Thanks, everybody.